The envelope from Social Security felt lighter than it should have. I held it up to the kitchen window, as if the afternoon sun might somehow make the number bigger. It didn't. $200 less than last month. Something about a recalculation of benefits, the letter said. After 42 years of teaching elementary school in Philadelphia, this was what I had to show for it. My daughter called it getting nickel and dime to death. Sarah lived in Portland now, with her wife and their 2 kids. We video chatted every Sunday, but it wasn't the same as having family close. The apartment felt too big and too quiet since Tom passed 3 years ago. His heart just gave out one Tuesday morning while he was reading the newspaper. The doctor said it was quick, painless. I still found myself setting 2 coffee mugs out every morning before I remembered. The hospital had been hiring for night positions. Nothing fancy, just someone to sit at the reception desk in the emergency department, check people in, answer phones. The pay was terrible. But it came with health insurance, and at 63, that mattered more than I wanted to admit. My knees weren't what they used to be, and there was a bottle of blood pressure medication on my counter that cost more each month than my first apartment's rent. I started on a Monday. The training took 2 days, mostly just learning their computer system and where the supply closets were. My shift ran from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. The hospital sat on the edge of the city, in a neighborhood that had seen better days. Abandoned warehouses lined one side of the street. The parking lot always had at least a dozen cars with people sleeping in them. That's where I first saw him. He looked maybe 50, maybe 70. Hard to tell. Weather does that to people who live outside. He had set up a careful camp near the ambulance bay, just out of range of the security cameras but close enough to catch some warmth from the building's heating vents. His shopping cart was organized like a tiny apartment on wheels, blankets folded just so, a plastic crate that served as a table, even a small potted plant zip-tied to the handle. The second week, I started bringing him things. Not money, I didn't have that to spare. But the hospital cafeteria threw away so much food at the end of my shift. Perfectly good sandwiches, fruit cups, sometimes an entire tray of cookies. It seemed wasteful, criminal even. I started packing them into grocery bags before the night janitor took them to the dumpster. He never said much at first. Just a nod, sometimes a quiet, "Thank you, ma'am." His voice sounded rough, like someone who didn't use it often. But he was always polite, always careful not to get too close or make me uncomfortable. I noticed he kept his area clean, picked up any trash that blew into his space. There was a dignity to him that you don't always see. I learned his name was David. He told me this on a particularly cold night in February when I brought him Tom's old winter coat. I had been meaning to donate it for years but could never quite bring myself to do it. It just hung in the closet, still smelling faintly of Old Spice and coffee. But watching David shiver in a thin jacket held together with duct tape, I knew Tom would have wanted him to have it. "David Martinez," he said, pulling the coat tight around his shoulders. "I used to be a pharmacist, 23 years at Walgreens. Then I got sick, lost my job, lost my apartment, lost everything." He said it matter-of-factly, like he was reciting someone else's story. "But this coat, this is real nice. Your husband, he must have been a good man." "He was," I said softly. "He really was." After that, we talked more. Nothing deep, just small observations about the weather, the neighborhood, the usual chaos of the emergency room. David had a sharp mind, you could tell. He'd comment on things I'd never notice, like how the ambulance drivers changed their routes based on which traffic lights were out, or how you could tell when a full moon was coming by the way people acted in the waiting room. 3 months into my job, I started noticing things myself. Small things at first. Medical supplies that should have been in the supply closet weren't. Medication counts that seemed off. I wasn't in charge of inventory, that was the day shift supervisor's job, but I helped with receiving sometimes. Boxes would come in, I'd sign for them, and by morning they'd be checked into the system at different quantities than what arrived. I mentioned it once to Ellen, the day supervisor. She was young, maybe 30, with red hair she wore in a tight bun and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Oh, you must have miscounted," she said, her voice bright and dismissive. "It happens all the time with new people. Don't worry about it." But I hadn't miscounted. I had been a teacher for over 4 decades. I knew how to count. Then the coffee incident happened. Every night around 3, I'd make a fresh pot in the break room. The hospital provided cheap grounds, but I brought in my own French roast from home. Small luxury, but it got me through those long hours when exhaustion pulled at every muscle. I'd pour myself a cup in my favorite mug, the one Sarah had painted for me in high school with "World's Best Mom" in crooked letters. That Thursday night, I was just reaching for the pot when my phone buzzed. Sarah was calling, which was unusual. She knew my work hours. "Mom? Sorry to call so late, but Mia just threw up everywhere and we can't figure out if it's the flu or something she ate and—" I stepped into the hallway to hear better, leaving my empty mug on the counter. We talked for maybe 10 minutes while Sarah described symptoms, and I tried to remember what I knew about childhood stomach bugs from my teaching days. By the time we hung up, I'd forgotten all about the coffee. I was walking back to the break room when I saw David through the window. He was standing by the emergency exit door, the one I'd propped open earlier because the night was unusually warm. He was gesturing urgently, trying to get my attention. I pushed the door open. "David? What's wrong?" "Do you need—" "Mrs. Linda," he said, using the name from my badge. His eyes were wide, serious in a way I'd never seen. "Don't drink the coffee tonight. Don't drink it. And don't tell anyone I said this." "What? The coffee? David, what are you talking about?" But he was already backing away, returning to his cart. "Please," he called over his shoulder, "just trust me. Don't drink it, and maybe don't come to work tomorrow. Call in sick." I stood there, confused, as he disappeared around the corner of the building. The whole interaction had lasted maybe 30 seconds. When I went back inside, Ellen was in the break room, pouring herself a cup from my pot. "Oh, good, you made fresh," she said. "The stuff from earlier was getting stale." She took a long sip and smiled at me. That same smile that didn't reach her eyes. Something made me pour my coffee down the sink. Some instinct I couldn't name. Ellen watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Not good?" she asked. "Changed my mind," I said. "Think I'll have tea instead." The rest of the night passed normally. Ellen worked in her office. I checked in patients, answered calls, filed paperwork. At 6:30, I started preparing the desk for the morning shift. That's when I heard the commotion. Ellen had collapsed in her office. 2 nurses found her seizing on the floor, her lips turning blue. They rushed her to the ER, called a code, started working on her with the kind of controlled urgency that emergency staff perfect over years. I stood in the doorway, watching, my heart pounding. She lived. The doctors said it was a severe reaction to something, possibly an overdose of insulin. Ellen wasn't diabetic. She had no reason to be taking insulin. And certainly not enough to cause a near-fatal hypoglycemic episode. The police came the next day. I had called in sick, like David suggested, which turned out to be fortunate because they wanted to interview everyone who'd been on shift that night. When they finally reached me at home, they asked about the coffee. Someone had found my mug in the break room sink, still with a few drops of liquid at the bottom. They had tested it. Insulin. A massive dose mixed into the coffee grounds, enough to kill someone my size within hours. "Did you make the coffee that night?" the detective asked. Her name was Rodriguez, and she had kind eyes that had seen too much. "Yes," I said. "I make it every night. It's better than the hospital stuff." "Did anyone else have access to it?" "Everyone on night shift. The break room isn't locked." I hesitated, but Ellen was the only one who drank from that pot. She poured herself a cup right after. Right after what, Mrs. Callahan? So I told her about the missing inventory, about Ellen's dismissive response, about David's warning. "And this David," Detective Rodriguez said carefully, "how did he know about the coffee?" "I don't know. I didn't even think to ask. I was just so confused by the whole thing. We'd like to talk to him." "Do you know his full name? Where we can find him?" David Martinez wasn't at his usual spot when I returned to work 2 days later. His cart was gone. The little potted plant lay on its side near the heating vent, dirt spilled across the concrete. My stomach dropped. I walked the entire perimeter of the hospital that night, calling his name softly so I wouldn't disturb the patients whose windows were open. Nothing. I checked the parking lot, the dumpster area, even the small park across the street where I'd sometimes seen him during the day. He had vanished. The investigation continued without him. The police searched Ellen's office and found a storage unit key taped behind a filing cabinet. Inside that unit, thousands of dollars worth of medications. Painkillers, mostly, oxycodone, hydrocodone, fentanyl patches, but also insulin, epinephrine, even chemotherapy drugs, all stolen from the hospital over the course of 18 months. Ellen had been selling them online, using encrypted messaging apps and cryptocurrency. The police found records of transactions totaling over $200,000. She'd been careful, taking small amounts that could be written off as waste or miscounted inventory. She'd been so careful, except I had noticed, and I had mentioned it to her. The insulin in the coffee hadn't been meant as medicine, it had been meant as murder. She knew you were getting suspicious, Detective Rodriguez explained, when we met for coffee, real coffee, at a diner far from the hospital. She'd been monitoring who accessed the supply closet records. When she saw you'd logged in to check old shipment manifests, she panicked. But how did David know? I asked. That's what I can't figure out. How did a homeless man know about coffee grounds that were poisoned in a locked break room? Rodriguez stirred sugar into her cup, thinking, we've been trying to find him. Asked around the neighborhood, showed his picture to other people living rough in the area. Nobody's seen him in weeks. That doesn't answer my question. No, she agreed. It doesn't. 4 weeks later, I got a letter. No return address, postmarked from Scranton. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper with careful handwriting. Dear Mrs. Linda, it read, I'm sorry I disappeared without saying goodbye. I knew the police would have questions I couldn't answer without making things complicated. You asked me once how I ended up on the street. I told you I lost my job as a pharmacist. What I didn't tell you was why. I was stealing medications from Walgreens, same as Ellen, almost exactly the same. I had debts, bad choices, a gambling problem I couldn't control. I stole for 8 months before they caught me. I lost my license, did 2 years in prison, and by the time I got out, I had nothing and nobody. That was 16 years ago. I've been living outside ever since. I recognized what Ellen was doing because I'd done it myself. I knew the signs, the patterns, the little tricks we tell ourselves to justify it, and I knew how far someone like that would go to protect themselves. I used to sleep near the break room window before I moved to the heating vent. The window doesn't close all the way. I heard her on her phone one night, talking to someone about needing to handle a problem. Heard her mention your name. The next evening, I watched through that same window while she mixed something into your coffee grounds. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew it wasn't sugar. I knew you were in danger. I couldn't go to the police myself. I have warrants in 3 states for minor infractions, sleeping where I shouldn't, trespassing. If they ran my name, I'd be arrested before I could help you, so I warned you the only way I could. You showed me kindness when you didn't have to. You saw me as a person. You gave me your husband's coat. That meant more than you know. I couldn't let you die for noticing what I used to do. I'm in Scranton now, working at a rehab center. It's just cleaning and kitchen work, nothing with medications, but it's honest. I have a room in a boarding house. There's a window, and heat, and a door that locks. Small things, but they're mine. Thank you for the sandwiches. Thank you for the coat. Thank you for talking to me like I was human. You saved my life long before I saved yours. Yours truly, David Martinez. I read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and placed it in my memory box, the one where I kept Sarah's childhood drawings and Tom's wedding ring and the pin from my 40th year of teaching. Detective Rodriguez called it providential timing when I showed her a copy. She'd wanted to charge David with something, obstruction maybe, but the DA said there was no case. He'd warned someone about a danger. That wasn't a crime, even if he couldn't explain how he knew about it. Ellen pleaded guilty to attempted murder and drug trafficking. She got 17 years. At the sentencing, her lawyer argued that she'd been under financial stress, that she'd made mistakes. The judge wasn't sympathetic. You're a healthcare professional, she said. You were trusted with people's lives. You tried to take one to cover up your theft. There's no justification for that. I didn't stay at the hospital. Couldn't. The night shift supervisor position opened up after Ellen's arrest, and they offered it to me with a significant raise. I turned it down. Some places collect too many ghosts. Instead, I found work at a library, part-time, shelving books and helping people with the computers. The pay was less, but I didn't need much. Sarah insisted on sending money every month despite my protests. "Mom, you gave me everything growing up. Let me give something back." I thought about David's letter often, about how we contain multitudes, as the poet said, how someone can do terrible things and still find their way back to goodness, how a person society had written off had saved my life, how my small kindnesses, given without expectation, had created a chain of events I never could have predicted. On the first anniversary of the coffee incident, I made a donation to the local homeless shelter in David's name. Then I baked cookies, packed them in plastic bags, and drove to the library where I knew people sometimes slept on the benches outside. I handed them out to anyone who wanted them, along with bottles of water and socks. Always socks. David had taught me that people living outside always need socks. An older man with a long gray beard took a bag and studied me carefully. "You're that lady," he said, "from the hospital. David told us about you before he left, said you were good people. Do you?" I hesitated. "Do you ever hear from him? Is he okay?" Last I heard, he was doing all right. Got himself cleaned up, found work. He sends money sometimes, when he can, helps out folks still on the street. The man smiled, revealing missing teeth. "He said you taught him something important." "What's that?" "That people can surprise you. That it's never too late to be someone different than who you were." I drove home as the sun set, painting the Philadelphia sky in shades of orange and pink. Tom used to say that every sunset was proof that endings could be beautiful. I hadn't understood what he meant at the time, too focused on the sadness of day turning to night. But I understood now. Sarah called that evening, her weekly check-in. We talked about Mia's school play and her wife's new job and the strange weather Portland had been having. Normal things, comfortable things. At the end of the call, she said, "Mom, I've been thinking, maybe we should visit more often. The kids barely know you, and they're growing up so fast." "I'd like that," I said, my voice catching slightly. "Also, there's something I haven't told you. We're thinking about moving back to Pennsylvania. My company is opening an office in Pittsburgh. It's not Philadelphia, but it's close enough for regular visits. What do you think?" What did I think? I thought about Tom and his love of sunsets, about David and his careful cart and his second chance, about Ellen and the darkness that can grow in people when desperation takes root, about my own journey from teaching children to serving coffee to shelving books, each phase revealing something new about who I was and who I could become. "I think," I said slowly, "that people need each other. And I think I've been alone long enough." 3 months later, Sarah and her family moved to Pittsburgh. They visit twice a month. The kids call me Grandma Linda and help me bake cookies that we package up and deliver to the shelter. Mia asked me once why we do it. "Because someone was kind to someone who needed it," I told her. "And that kindness saved my life. Now we're passing it on." "Like a chain?" she asked. "Like ripples," I said, "in a very big pond." I never heard from David again after that one letter. Sometimes I look for him online, checking news from Scranton, wondering if I might see his name attached to something good. But maybe it's better this way. Maybe some angels are meant to appear once, deliver their message, and then fade back into the world to help someone else. I kept Tom's other coat, the brown one he wore in spring, but I don't keep it in the closet anymore. It hangs by the front door, ready to be given away the moment someone needs it more than I do. Because you never know what ripples you're creating. You never know whose life you're saving. You never know who might save yours in return. All you can do is be kind, be observant, be human. The rest, as Tom would say, is just a beautiful ending waiting to unfold.